Okay, good evening, everybody. It is 7 o'clock here for the regular meeting, public hearing, May 27th, Tuesday, here at the Old Town Hall for the Dayton Zoning Board of Appeals. If you can please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, as you can see, we do have a packed agenda tonight. We do have two presentations that are going to come beforehand. We just want to confirm our next meeting date, which is June 24th, 2025. Want to quickly just address the two public hearings, Mako Enterprises and Michelle White. In the event that your meeting, your case is motion to continue to the Tuesday, June 24th date, would that be an issue for you guys to attend? Should we have to? It would be fine. Okay. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Daniel Higgins, the Vice Chairman of the Dayton Planning Board. He wants to address zoning bylaw amendments to the home occupations as of right and the home occupations by special permit. Dan, whenever you're ready, sir.
The planning board has two warrants on the agenda, both related to home occupation businesses. One is, as you said, by right, so that's under the purview of the planning board and the zoning enforcement officer. But the second one is home occupation by special permit, and the approving authority for that is the zoning board of appeals. So I did just want to have an opportunity to present that to you, go over it, answer questions you might have. Basically, the both of them are. It's a balance between putting a good neighbor policy, since somebody is running a business, even though it's out of their home, but it is in a residential area. So making sure the standards for what you would consider a good neighbor in that instance is defined as entities with a zoning enforcement officer. The other is we do have a lot of businesses in town that are home-based. In fact, they grow by about 18 to 20 every year. Pretty much our only area of business growth, really. And there are a lot of people for whom this is a very necessary second income. So we are looking to expand what's allowed as far as types of businesses. Principally, the additions would be to areas that are defined as, let's see here, business or professional offices, including medical, so therapist, the doctor's office, something like that, where it's in their home. A personal service establishment, so think barbershop, hairstylist, tax prep, that sort of thing. And also motor vehicle, general and body repair. All of these have limitations on them and more limitations that you may impose because it is a special permit. Particularly the automotive service shops, you must have a minimum of at least 2 acres. That was kind of modeled on what's allowed today for landscaping businesses in a residential neighborhood. They are allowed to operate in there. In that case, they're required to have 11 acres. I believe it's 11 off the top of my head. And the reason for that is because they have debris, heavy equipment, you want to be able to hide that, make it not so visible to neighbors. So by having an expanded lot, they have the ability to do that. So the same thought process was here, and we landed on 2 acres. That gives the person the ability to screen it, hide it from the street, move it to a secluded area of the property where any noise that might come from it is less intrusive for the neighbors. Perhaps have increased zoning setbacks to make that more palatable. And for all of these, as I said, there are further restrictions to help make it easier for the neighborhood overall. Just a couple caveats. There is also a statement here about any premises that are governed by HOA agreements, deed restrictions, covenants, or other lease restrictions shall be further restricted by these agreements. So if you're in an HOA and the HOA says no, that's the end of the story. There's no appeal that this would allow you to work. I don't know if you have any.
I do have one question. I'll let you too. Can you just quickly define artisan manufacturing?
Yeah, there is actually a definition that we're going to be adding. I don't know if it was in your packet. But the definition of the production of goods by the use of hand tools or small scale light mechanical equipment
Okay,
occurring solely within an enclosed building, which occupies 100,000 square feet of gross floor area. Typical uses with negative impact on surrounding properties may include woodworking, cabinet shops, ceramic studios,
okay,
jewelry manufacturing, similar types of arts, crafts, or food processing.
okay. And my second question, only because of the businesses mentioned, I can foresee this being a more contested one by butters regarding the automotive service shop. I don't have enough knowledge, obviously, I didn't write it. And I want to be able to, defend it. I can, if a butter were to say 2 acres, that's too small. How did you guys arrive at the 2 acre number for you guys determining that you thought that? I'm not saying it's not sufficient. I'm just curious how you arrived at that number.
It was a vote by the Economic Development Committee.
Okay.
Board, brought into it. We thought 11, which is for landscaping, is too high.
Yeah.
One is too small. There's a restriction on there to a maximum of 2 garage vehicles.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna have a lot full of cars.
Okay.
So, but 2 would be sufficient.
Especially because the garage kind of also limits the amount of
Correct.
business, literal business that would be in there at one time. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, so if there's a business in the town of Dayton right now that's actually running and has a business certificate from the town, these new bylaws, if they are not restricted, they're not gonna be held accountable to be brought up to these new bylaws. Are they gonna have to do that?
Or the grandfathered in?
Or they grandfathered in? That's my
That would be a
question.
question for the zoning enforcement officer. I don't actually
Because
know.
if you
Good
go-
question.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a small company out there that started a business in town and they're doing everything the right way, but yet they don't meet some of this criteria.
Right.
But he was already issued a permit to start building or working on his property.
So my understanding, and if you go back far enough in time, this may not be true, but today, if someone were to come and want and get a business certificate, it does go to the building inspector. If it's a home, he does have to sign off on it. So at some point, I think that he or his predecessor signed off.
Right. Okay. So if anything, then the building inspector will be the one to say it didn't go before you guys because it didn't. I felt it was okay.
I think the difference might be somebody who has that business never bothered to get a
I see.
Permit.
business permit
Mhm.
certificate, but they've been in operation for a long time.
Different.
They may have to come before.
Different situation.
Yeah,
Decision.
that's different though. I'm just saying, like, somebody's tried to do everything they can, and now at this point it's changed, so. And I just didn't want to see something throw a small business out of town because it didn't meet the requirements.
Yeah, I mean,
Early on.
exactly, because I was gonna piggyback on that saying I love the changes because I think
It helps.
we need to be encouraging this in Dayton as much as we can. And I don't think that these are restricting, it's more,
Right, defined.
right, exactly.
There is also a waiver of compliance, so should somebody fall into that circumstance, they don't strictly meet the requirements here, you have the ability to make a waiver decision.
Okay,
So if they've been in business for 10 years, and the 10 years are probably good. They've got 1.5 acres instead of 2.
and more just a question out of curiosity, do you feel like were businesses that had been trying to operate but couldn't, and maybe this can help them, or is this just?
I think there are more businesses that are in the situation of they're not operating legally right now.
And this would help them operate legally?
This could help them operate legally.
Okay,
I think there's a fair number of those.
okay,
We're not doing this with the intent of helping them operate legally. We're doing this with the intent of saying, what is reasonable?
okay.
If they now, by expanding that umbrella, they fall under what is reasonable, great. So
Okay.
it just makes it easier for people who are looking to start.
Oh, well, that's good, okay. John, go ahead.
So let me ask a couple questions then. Is the zoning enforcement officer going to be the person who also does the inspections? So for example, if somebody has a barber shop or, a beautician opens a service or a home massage service, who's going to do the inspection for that?
The Board of Health?
Inspection
Is
to
that going to be
what
done
sort?
by the Board of Health? Is it going to be done by the zoning board?
Well, if
It'll
it's
be
a board of
both.
health, if there's board of health involved, they would do their own inspection. And I don't know if for hairdresser barber salon, there may be a board of health aspect to that.
But is that clear or not clear?
That would be the Board of Health, whatever. So whether you operate at your home, whether you operate at a commercial location, I think it's, the Board of Health has a say
I
in
guess
it,
what
and they would be.
I'm wondering though, and I'm not opposed to this, but I'm wondering if it's defined as to who's going to do these inspections. So, for example, also, I would ask the same thing about trash or waste removal. You know, if there's increased trash or waste, that might not be the type of trash or waste that's normally able to be put out on the side of the street for our sanitation company to pick up. How is that going to be disposed of?
Right, if someone comes before us and asks that question,
Who's going
who
to?
enforces it?
Well, I would say the article for home applications by special permit has been on the books for decades. More limited language, but for example, can't have more than 3 people in the household. Let's see, signs have to be not more than 1 square foot. So there is already a process and has been for decades about who's doing the inspection.
Okay,
The fact that we're expanding the type of business should have no impact about who's doing the inspection.
it would just follow.
To answer your question about who's doing the inspection, I would think it's the zoning enforcement officer.
I would assume.
But I would say none of this changes whatever exists in the town today in that respect.
So could a dentist, for example, if somebody moved into town and they're a doctor of dentistry, could they open a practice in their home?
If they have no more than 2 patients at a single time and proper parking and don't cause undue traffic,
And fall
then
within,
they would
and then we
fall,
get-
I think, under personal service, yes.
And then we get into the disposal issues as
But
well.
then that's beyond this. That is-
right,
Yeah,
That is, whether they're commercial, they're home-based, if they have disposal issues, then they deal with the appropriate authority, whoever that might be.
and you said HOAs are excluded.
HOAs have the ability
or-
to govern, supersede this. If an HOA says, no, you can't do this in our HOA, that's their, they have their permission.
okay,
It's nothing that's here that the town says, oh no, they're fine. If the HOA wants to restrict it further, that's certainly within their right.
okay.
Thank you.
Dave, you have any questions? Nope. And is Elise on you? She is. Elise, I'm not sure if you were able to hear any of this, but do you have any questions?
No, thank you very much.
No problem.
I can hear it perfectly. Thank you.
All right, Jen, anything else or? Awesome, thanks so much. All right, our next presentation is by Serpide, also known as the Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development District, proposed conservation bylaw revisions. Whenever you are ready, you may present.
My name is Michelle Finger. I'm the Assistant Director of Environmental Planning over at Serpide. I am joined here by my colleague and Environmental Planning Manager, Danica Belknap. So tonight I have a presentation for you. I see, and I did hear that you mentioned you do have a pretty packed agenda, so I want to be considerate.
No problem, no problem.
So I'm just going to take a moment to share the screen. So the reason for our coming before you tonight is to ultimately discuss Dayton's conservation subdivision bylaw. I'm going to start with a little bit of background since this is the first time that we've gone before the board.
Sorry, just one second. Carrie, can you just full screen that so the people in the public can see it a little bit better? If you're not able to, that's fine. I just didn't know if you're able to full screen the presentation part. But if it's gonna limit your access to other things, don't worry about it.
I don't think it's what-
Okay, all right, that's fine. Sorry about that, Glenn.
No worries. So I want to provide you with a little bit of background on ultimately how we got to where we are today and what we're doing, what the next steps are. So open space designs, which yours is called a conservation subdivision, has so many different names. Ultimately, they provide flexible subdivision designs, reduce environmental footprint of development with smaller lot sizes, undeveloped land set aside for conservation can be used as that purpose. And then going back to, there are so many different names across the Serpide region. These are referred to as open space residential designs, natural resource protection, zoning, conservation subdivision, etc. Some of Serpide's work included doing a regional bylaw review and an analysis. This was something that was funded by the EPA in fiscal year 22, which was a planning assistance grant. During this process, we did a regional review, which we looked at all of the communities within the Serpent region and compared it to a tool by Mass Audubon that takes into consideration a bunch of different criteria, which we'll go into a little further along. We did interviews with the community and developers as well, just to get a better understanding of your bylaw. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities here? Just so you're aware, we are also not only working on updates for Dayton's open space residential bylaw. However, we are also working on Middleborough's. And then what we're doing a little later this week is having a peer-to-peer exchange where folks are able to sit down with one another from different communities and hear a little bit about the different bylaws that they have, some of the challenges being faced, some of the success stories, just so folks can understand what other communities are also facing. Before you, a map over here that just shows all of the different municipalities that either allow an OSRD bylaw by right or by special permit. The ones that are in white ultimately do not allow this within their town. So a little bit of a breakdown, 70% of the communities allow an OSRD bylaw, 3 allow by right and 16 by special permit. 61% of the region is zoned for OSRDs. A little more of a breakdown. So the minimum amount of open space required is around 20 to 50% with a 39 on average. Dayton currently, I believe, allows 20% within their bylaw. And then the maximum allowed housing density is roughly 1.09 to 22.23 units per acre. On average in the Serpent region, it's about 4.8. A few years ago, I believe back in 2023 roughly, we started to do all of these community interviews, again, to go back and listen to folks and see what the challenges are, ultimately what you would like to see when it comes to improving an OSRD bylaw. Some of the community interview takeaways, over 50% of communities are seeing their bylaws utilized. Generally identified best practices on paper do not necessarily translate to success on the ground. And that's why we're here having all of these conversations with the various boards, committees, and commissions within Dayton. A committed planning board seems to be more effective at ensuring low impact and environmentally conscious design. Some of the challenges that we heard include ensuring meaningful open space designation and low impact design being a challenge. Ownership and maintenance of open space. Ultimately, if this does become within the ownership of the town, who's going to maintain this property? We hear it constantly, resources are spread out pretty thinly. That's one major point that we'd love to hear a little bit more from you about. Large parcels or larger parcels for subdivisions are very rare across the region. Is this a strategy that needs to be shifted? I think that was a question that was posed in some of these interviews. An educational disconnect between higher density and environmental protection. So ultimately providing folks with the facts, the data, the information to see how can we address all these points. Who do we need to speak with in order to make any updates to this bylaw? We also had interviews with developers and engineers just to see from the permit aspect of those that are applying, what are the challenges that are being faced. So special permits isn't necessarily more difficult than by right. The ease of permitting depends more on the planning board's flexibility and the required level of detail for the field plan. Savings on construction costs is a worthwhile incentive for OSRDs, and surrounding open space does not increase home sales value. So a little bit about your future. As board members, you already know quite a bit about, so I'll try to go through it a little quickly. The purpose of the bylaw today is to improve planning board's oversight on the selection of conservation land to ensure it's valuable and useful to residents for recreation. And then encouraging low impact development use by developers for better stormwater management. Some brief points about your bylaw. You have it by special permit. You allow it in the residential and business zoning districts. Going back to 20% is the minimum required open space. The minimum parcel size is around 4 acres. The minimum required lot size is approximately 7,500 square feet. And then the frontage is 50 square feet. Included within your bylaw is also an open space centric design process. Circuit calculations just from around the region include the maximum allowed density being 5.81 units per acre. Acres for OSRDs, just over 10,000, closer to 11,000. And then the percentage of town zone for OSRDs is roughly 76.10%. So going back and forth over the past, I want to say maybe 2 years, we've had a lot of back and forth conversations with the towns. We've gone through some, had conversations with the boards, and we wanted to just share some of the feedback that we received in that time frame to help us get to where we are, which is the red line version of the draft bylaw. Some of the town goals include going back to improving planning board oversight, encouraging low impact development, and ensuring thoughtful, context sensitive open space preservation. Observations include that the bylaw is frequently used by developers. Most open space is owned by HOAs. Developers often default to preserving wetlands. Lot sizes are typically between 10 and 12 square feet, 1,000 square feet. And no conservation subdivision has been approved since 2015. So that's something that we were informed of. We were told about the application for Forest Hills, which was appealed.
Yep.
So all this to say that there really haven't been many from our understanding that have gone to the court. And then developers tend to prefer the 40B project due to the greater flexibility that it provides. The planning and procedural considerations from the town. By development review process, encouraging pre-consultation meetings before an applicant goes to see it, having some kind of review process to allow them to have a better understanding of what they need to complete a whole application. Require submission of both conventional and conservation subdivision plans so that folks can understand the differences between the two and what the impacts ultimately are. And then considering developing a narrative requirement, again, to provide that background information, so explaining how that 4-step design process I was mentioning applies to this application, justifying the selection and condition of proposed open space. Why are they designating it in a certain location within that parcel? And then identify the existing and planned recreational amenities, ownership, and connectivity. The last thing is design flexibility is encouraged. Some issues that we were informed of, and something that we've discussed back and forth, is the minimum open space requirement, which is currently 20%. Is that too high? Is that too low? Maximum 25% wetland allowance. Emphasizing the usability and accessibility of the open space. Recreational amenities should be encouraged. Adding language to specify types of recreational uses allowed or favored in open space. Requiring the maintenance plans and enforcement mechanisms. And defining contiguity, ultimately what that means. It's always helpful in a zoning bylaw to provide definitions. So you'll see towards the end of the red line version that we provided, we do provide a set of definitions to clarify those points. And then considering requiring conservation restrictions for any land that is not conveyed to the town. Going back to right before this red line version of the bylaw, we did review Dayton's master plan, the open space recreation plan. We understand that the stormwater bylaw currently is reviewed through a town process, but we did go back and review that bylaw. We did ultimately reference it in here. Due to the changes being made, we didn't want to get too specific in there, but ensure that there's a synergy between the two bylaws. There was a local impact development report that was done by Mass Housing a few years ago that provided some recommendations and key points, so we made sure to review that information. the subdivision rules and regulations by the town of Dayton. And then Mass Audubon's bylaw review for voluntary development and climate smart nature-based solutions, which allows us to have a better understanding of what best practices are, where certain sections of the bylaw are in terms of those best practices, and what we can do to work with you to best reach those and see what works for the town as well. So I'll kind of pause there. That was a little bit of a mouthful, but just wanted to bring you up to speed on the background of how we got to where we are and ultimately go through that zoning bylaw and at your discretion, if you have any comments or questions, we're really looking to receive as much information as possible. I will note, just as we had mentioned to the planning board, our contract does end at the end of June. So we're happy to work with you on providing us with any feedback via Carrie virtually, if that's better. I know it's a lot of information to go through. I don't expect to go through it, especially with such a packed meeting tonight, word for word, but really we're looking to listen to you. Did we get things right? Is there something that could be changed or adapted? Is there something else that needs to be considered?
A quick question I have is, when it comes to if it's valuable and usable for recreation, what if there are parcels of land that based on wetlands or for other reasons are not viable for use for recreation, but are still worth keeping for the value reason? Are you only going to consider them if they're both? Or my worry is, what if it's, oh, it's great, but we can't use it for anything? Is it still worth saving?
Ultimately, yes, wetlands
Okay.
are always worth saving. They do have so many environmental benefits to them. I know something that was posed by the planning board was potentially removing the requirement of wetlands being considered open space so that it continues to protect that wetland space and then has that consideration of the 20%.
Okay.
So you're protecting that open space and the wetland without saying that wetland has to be a certain number of that 20%.
That was my only, the only concern I had was like, you know, I'm all for saving whatever land that we have, but like, if it can't be used recreationally, I just wouldn't want that to, too bad it doesn't qualify anymore. I wanted to make sure that even if it can't be used recreationally, there's still some value to it on this bylaws end. Board members, anything else, John?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, by the way, I really appreciate it. And my understanding is I'm gonna probably hear this a part of this certainly again next week from Open Space Committee.
Yes.
But having said that, a couple questions I have for now. I know you mentioned Forest Hills. There's also Strawberry Fields, which is a 40B project. Hasn't come to fruition yet and is still, I believe, going through a court process.
Correct. So it's one that we did here that was denied. That
And
is
that was done after 2015.
correct.
So
Thank you.
that will represent in total probably another 130 homes, I think.
If it weren't fast,
If
right?
it come to, to full fruition. But my questions are a couple of things. Does the recommendations in the report take into account different areas of the town by zone, if you will, where it's not, there are certain things that we couldn't do at this point, even in the near future, if but not for, there's no access to water, there's no access to pipe, there's no access to a lot of things. So we have that land, but potentially that land that we have, it would be difficult in some respects to determine what kind of open space it could be used for if we don't have access, for example, to even have water there. Because of, hold up mitigation factors of the cost of millions of dollars for something like that. So that's one of the concerns I had, the questions. And then again, to go back to, I was listening to the numbers you were given on per acre and, units per acre, things like that as well. And I'm gonna go back to the quote 40B unquote process again, because in a town like ours, our numbers are going backwards. They're not going forward to meet that 10% threshold. And then the question becomes, again, defining the type of sustainable spaces for even small projects like this, even if they're 8, 10, 12, 15, 25 units that are open space projects that allow for sustainability around it environmentally as well. And I'm wondering how much of that's taken into account in the project. I have more questions, but I'll start with those.
Is it all right? If one for one, so if
Sure.
we retrieve it.
Go for it.
Oh, if you could start with your first.
Just say your first question for, yeah, with the
I'm
first
sorry,
question.
okay.
Yeah.
So the first part of it was really focused on, with breaking the town up into zones, if you will,
Mhm.
or regions or areas. What you envision or what the plan calls for, considering the lack of access that we would be able to provide for residents, whether it be to build any kind of small footprint housing developments, or for that matter, access to the open space because we don't have certain things that are required to be there, such as water, sewage, things like that.
In terms of accessibility, I will say that that's what we're kind of looking for, all the boards and commission members to provide us with some of that information and feedback in terms of what you envision. Ultimately, we'd like to hear all that feedback and do this, but I know that there, in terms of spaces not accessible, there are several state and federal grants that can be applied for, and that's something that CERC can also assist with, is ensuring that we're able to provide you with the opportunity for those funds in order to make some of those spaces that you would like to see accessible. You know, if you have some kind of open space and you want to use it for a purpose, however, folks have difficulty, folks have different levels of what they're capable of doing in terms of accessing the space as well. We want to make sure that we're best assisting you as much as possible. So if that's what you do as a board for that, we're happy to just make note of that and see what we can do to allow you to reach that goal.
And the second question I had on that for now was with regard to development and open space and building sustainable open spaces. When developers that want to come in and do small footprint projects, because I heard you say the word small projects
So
in effect. Go ahead.
small projects, I guess, in regards to open space would mean things such as playgrounds, things for folks to be able to use this space in a way that isn't developing specifically like housing right on that recreational portion, but something for folks to go and use, and whether it be walking through a trail or kayaking in a pond and so on. We want to make sure that that is actually usable space. So when we say like low impact development of impervious surfaces that are being used. And then as low impact as a playground to allow kids to use, as just two examples of that.
Does the report make recommendations as to where in town or what could be utilized in open space, not necessarily how it might be used, but what could be used? You know, you made the comment of, I think the aggregate was 29%. It's a 20%.
So that the 20% is what's within your current bylaw.
Right, I realize that.
However,
Right.
I would have to go back to the low impact development report and see if there are specific areas that it does recommend. To my knowledge, right off the bat, I don't believe it does. However, I would like to review that information and I can circle back to Carrie with that so she can provide you with that. answer.
Well, I'll see you again next week.
That's good.
Greg,
No, I'm good at this time.
good. Dave, you have anything?
Well said.
Elise, do you have anything?
Hello. I was wondering, I can't really hear very well, but with these open spaces, are they part of subdivisions? Are they,
Yes.
okay. No, I don't, I was wondering who's maintaining these trails and parks and stuff, but if it's a subdivision, then I don't have a question. I thought it would be the town. I just misunderstood something. That's okay. I'm fine.
In terms of just going back to that point of maintenance, that is an issue that we see in several towns, is the onus typically is to maintain these properties, the trails, the open space, et cetera. However, with the town already having to maintain or review or have so many roles, or where we'll have to say for so many properties, it becomes a little difficult in order to be able to fully maintain this to the standard of what folks are looking for. Dayton is not the only town that does face these challenges. So just in terms of maintenance, I would say that that would be something that the town would need to discuss a little further when it comes to those specifics of the who's and what's, because it would ultimately fall on the town employees. And quite frankly, the resources are just constantly spread out very thinly.
Thank you.
So board members, obviously, you heard us say that their contract deadline is the end of June. So if you have any comments that you think of after, get them to carry as soon as possible. So they have time to respond to them in time, and they can put them into effect how they need to. Obviously, I know you went before planning already with this presentation, right? Do you have just one more board to go before?
Oh, we have several, yeah.
In Dayton?
Yep, we have the,
I know,
selectmen tomorrow.
Okay.
Trails, recreation,
I know you have an open space, so.
open space.
So it's not like we're the last one. You still have other boards that are gonna give you more questions and comments after.
Yes.
Okay, okay,
Correct, so we're ultimately doing like a tour
right,
around
okay.
all the different, that's what I'm referring to it, it seems to be landing, so we're looking for as much feedback as possible.
Okay.
So that we can provide you with something that you're happy with.
No, that's great. And you should, I just wanted to make sure that, like, we won't be the last ones to give you comments. So I don't want to put pressure on the board members to try to get things in when you might get 20 different questions next week or tomorrow. So,
Thank you.
okay.
And very quickly, I just want to provide you with next steps. Just so you're aware, we do have a regional workshop coming up on the 11th from 12 to 2 p.m. It's going to be at the Middleborough Library. What we would like to do is just provide some of that background information that you've seen, but also another opportunity for you to be able to discuss with other town staff, other boards such as yourself, and talk about what the challenges are, what the success stories are, some of the zoning bylaw update process that you're going through. So just want to make you all aware of that. And then the last point we discussed, which is June 30th is the end of the deadline. However, we want to work with you as best as possible. Again, going back to all the different boards, gathering all that feedback, providing you with an updated version. And then we want to make sure that you're satisfied with what it is that we're providing you with.
All right, awesome. Sounds good. Anything else? You're all set?
No, that's
Good.
all.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
What time is that meeting in Middleborough?
It was 12 to 2. I can't cover all the other ones, but. All right, we are moving on to the public hearing, Mako Enterprises LLC and Elevator Properties, 233R Somerset Street, map lot 201 variance application. We do have the deeds that were provided by the applicant as well as the public, and an updated plan. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to the applicant first to present the new information. We will then deliberate, which can involve questions to Marguerite, who is on now, right? Did you pop in? Okay, and then we will turn it over to the public. Just remember the public, I know this is, a very interesting case for you guys. We can just ask to hold any comments or questions until the public input portion begins. And then 2, if you have any questions or comments regarding your property with the applicant in terms of what they've done, what they are doing, we as a board cannot hear them. If it's anything that's going to involve anything that may be a civil dispute between you and the owner, I'm not saying they're not valid. I'm not saying they're not relevant. We as a board just have no input on that. So any conversation with that, we can't really hear. It won't affect our decision either way. Certainly bring it up to the abutter and then, go from there. We can provide you any information that we have. But we can't really address any kind of comments that you may have regarding what they've done, what they will do, what they have done, anything like that. So whenever you're ready, you may present.
At this point, anybody got a motion?
No, the board members are still myself, John, and Elise, we're all here, so we're good to go.
Cool.
Oh, yes, we do need a new motion. As a board member, I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing for this case. So moved. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Roll call vote. Elise is on Zoom. Aye, Zachary Karen.
Greg Logan.
Jonathan Gale.
David Phillips.
Elise Vincent on Zoom.
All right, thank you. All set.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for being here. Again, my name is Frederick Cassian on behalf of the applicants. And Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for the extensions you provided.
No problem.
The past few months.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. I know you guys are busy and I do appreciate you doing that. So there were 4 main items that we needed to address. A revised plan. There was one to put the easement, so I did the research I did provide the deeds to Kerry by email, and I just included them behind the survey, so you'd have them.
Yep.
And I can go over those with you. Also, there was a little bit of a bottleneck, if you remember on the top, as I'm looking at the plan on the top left, where we weren't sure what that distance was coming off of Bedford Street, so I had to measure it out, and it is 20 feet, which had to do with the firefighters' concern about getting into that side of the property.
Yep.
Other issues was the fire chief's letter. Again, that was one issue, was that access point, whether it was gonna be 20 feet or not, which it is. The other one was, recall on the plan, that garage, the larger of the garages towards the Prospect Street side, it was encroaching into that access for the fire chief had noted. So after speaking with my clients, actually, Mr. Seaboth is here with Atlantic Properties. The plan would be, if the project moves forward, to just demolition that building.
Okay.
And just remove it. Other issue was raised by the part on the sewage or septic on the property, the applicant's intent, that it could be a condition of the decision if it's allowed, would be to connect to the public sewer. And as far as the updated plan with the easements, so I reviewed the easements that are contained in some of the deeds. You look on the plan, it'll note some that have access, some that don't. And I saw some of the deeds that were submitted by the abutters, and then we had the surveyor pull all the deeds that were around, that were touching the property. Again, some of them do have easement language, some of them don't. My interpretation, reading those easements, is there for access. So they grant, and some of them are worded a little different, but the way I interpret them is they grant access over the subject property. So if you're looking at their property, it's kind of coming out of the back of their properties, they can access over the subject property onto that driveway. So they're essentially access easements for egress and ingress. That's how I understand it. If you look at my plan, you can see where the driveway is at, for instance, the Clink property, they would need to come over that red line, which would be the property line. So that would be access over the subject property, and then would get into that driveway area, which then they would have their access in and out to Prospect and Bedford. If there's any other questions, I know the deeds just came in today.
Well, I mean, we've had some needs for a while that the applicants have provided. So I think, I know that's not all new information. One question, I'll turn it over to Marguerite regarding the easements. From what I understand, not saying there aren't other reasons to, deny, but there's nothing in our language saying that the easements is a reason to deny a proposal, correct?
So what I can say is that I've looked at the easement, the deeds that were attached and provided to the town. And I do agree with the characterization that the petitioner just gave about those easements. Given the language that's in those easements, they don't prohibit a variance under any of the provisions that would legally justify the granting or denial of a variance. But if a variance were to be granted and this lot were to be built upon, it would be built subject to these easements remaining in existence. So that would potentially have an impact on where things could go on the property and what rights the new owner or current owners could have of the property. And that could, of course, impact marketability and other pieces, but it doesn't necessarily involve any of the legal elements that would be needed to approve or deny a variance.
So I guess that being said, we can't say we're denying this because they're easements. However, should this be approved and should this go forward, those easements stay.
So the easements that were shown in this case don't give that authority. I don't want to say it's never the case that you could deny or approve because of easements. But
Yep.
these particular ones, based on what I reviewed, don't impact it. But you are correct, they don't go away. They're not impacted by whether or not you grant or deny this variance. They exist. The rights exist in the owners of the properties that have those easements.
Okay, and Carrie, regarding the fire chief's comments, I know there was that 20-foot question was raised. There were others though, I believe. Brought by the fire chief, because I know that the fire chief, from what I understand from his comments, he wasn't saying, if you approve, I want these conditions. He's saying, if you approve this, these things should be met, correct?
You'd want that.
Thank you. So yes, there was the 20-foot, so that the first thing was a 20-foot wide access road driveway can be 12 feet of road material with 4 feet of clear vegetation on each shoulder of the road. Also, the driveway must have an unobstructed vertical clearance no less than 13 feet 6 inches, must be capable of supporting the loads of fire apparatus, and shall be all weather surface that is maintained. The driveway must extend with 50 feet of at least one exterior door. The driveway can have no inside turning radiuses less than 25 feet. And if the roadway is a dead end, is a great length, then a turnaround for fire apparatus must be provided. And the gradient of the roadway shall not exceed the 10% unless approved in writing by the fire chief. So I think the biggest things were the roadway extending within 50 feet of at least one exterior door. And the road driveway can have no turning inside radiuses less than 25 feet. I do see that you did the due diligence to measure the 20 feet of road access, but what about the turning radiuses less than 25 feet? Was that addressed?
According to the engineer, there's plenty of clearance for that turn to be made. And again, I think any decision that's made, the council weigh in would, can be conditioned on these being met. But certainly be obviously want to make sure that the fire department is satisfied with any project that's going in there to ensure, the safety of anyone who's going to be living in there.
Okay. Margaret, before I turn it over to the board members, because some of the questions you might be able to answer by you, do you have any other comments besides the one about the easements? Or was that the only thing that you had?
For easements or for the fire chief, or are you talking in general? I'm sorry.
In general, but also the fire chiefs, actually. So if you want to address the fire chiefs and then go into other things you may have.
So I do think that it would be helpful to know that, hear from the petitioner. I heard now about 2 of the conditions, but helpful to hear that he believes all of these conditions can be met. They can, of course, if that's how the petitioner feels, then they can be conditioned in a variance approval, should you do that. My review of the application, I have some other areas of concern in terms of the history of the application, but I can reserve my comments until you reach hear from others if you want.
No, that's okay. While I have you on, and I have you on, but while you're talking, if you want to go into those other concerns you have, and then I'll bring it over to the other board members.
Sure. So from what I can tell, and my knowledge, because I was actually representing the board back then, this is not the first time that this parcel has come before the board for a variance. And the history of this parcel is such that, at the time it may have originally been created, it would have been a pre-existing non-conforming use. But then it appears that there was somebody who owned it, who also owned some abutting property. And so from a legal standpoint, it merged by operation of law and lost its pre-existing non-conforming status. I think that that back in 2003, there was an application for a variance and a decision that was provided to the board, I think in your February packet, if I recall correctly. And that history was laid out. I think at the time there was a presentation made by the new owner's attorney that indicated that there may have been an attempt to subdivide back out this parcel. But that subdivision doesn't operate to to change the fact that now we have a merged lot that's conforming and legal. And when it was subdivided out, it became a hardship that was self-created. And so that's where my concern lies, is that I think that this lot now, from a legal standpoint, for purposes of a variance, does appear to have to involve a self-created hardship by a predecessor in interest. I recognize it's not necessarily by these developers, but
Right.
legally, a predecessor in interest can bind a self-created hardship justification for not granting a variance.
And also too, I think it was stated that they were looking to combine the frontage in order to help meet that, but our bylaw does not allow that.
That's true. Yes, I did notice that, and thank you for pointing that out. Our bylaw would require you to grant, the variance that you would grant would have to be from one or the other access point. So either the Prospect Street or the Bedford Street access point. So it would not be a variance to for a 55-foot area of frontage. It would be one of the two other amounts.
Who decides what access point is picked for that? Is it
So,
is it how the applicant presents it or how we vote?
well, this is a very unusual lot.
I know.
So generally, it would be whichever is going to be your primary, driveway, and there would have been a determination as to which would be the primary driveway. In this case, I have a feeling both driveways, both entryways are going to be used. I don't know if there's, a postal address that they're thinking about, although the address for the property says Summer Street, so perhaps not. I think in this case that if the developer chose which of the two, it would make sense. But regardless, I think the board, in the best case would have the larger of the two entryways. And in the worst case, it would be the smaller of the two entryways. But that would be what this variance amount is.
And the main reason why I asked that is because I see on their updated plans by Bedford Street, that driveway, they're showing the road, they're showing the new roadway width of 20 feet. However, on the Prospect side street, there's no measure. It seems to be, according to their plans, it looks like it's bigger. I'm not going to say that it is based on what the plan looks like. So that being said, if the Prospect one is the way in, is that also 20 feet?
Well, according to their application, I just found it, it says that Bedford Street was 23.64 feet. And Prospect Street is 29.88 feet.
Okay.
I'm toggling between two different plans, but I do see the 29.88 shown on the Prospect Street side. It's in blue in the colored version that I have.
Yep, us too.
And the 23.64 is also shown. I think that the 20-foot aspect was to make sure that there was truly a 20 feet of clearance for the fire truck to be able to access that property. So they wanted to make sure that it truly was, it legitimately existed and was able to be cleared and used to get into that property.
Okay.
So in this case, I would suspect they would be using the Prospect Street side.
Okay, and this being said, looking at the other, like I said, well, I mentioned only two of the fire chief's concerns. Are you confident that the other fire chief's comments can be met?
So, I mean, I think you need to ask the petitioner that. I think you need to know that information, but.
So, sorry, I was, but I mean,
Yeah.
so do you feel that I mentioned the one about the 25 feet turn, and I mentioned about the 50 feet with at least one exterior door. Can you address the others? I mean, like I said, the 20 feet one you addressed, but are all the others confident you can that those will be able to be met?
Yes, after discussing with the engineer and the applicant, they were confident that these items could be addressed, and that if the project goes forward.
Okay. John, do you have any comments? I mean, I'll let you know. Yeah, you are a board member, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think hearing that, you've discussed it with the applicant and that the engineer has some ideas. I'd still rather see another plan
Fine, what?
that shows where the driveway is gonna have the turnout. I'd like to see that the space is defined for the fire apparatus, for example. And then you mentioned also just now, you talked about hooking up to town sewage. But that didn't sound like that was definite, or am I wrong?
No, it's not. I'm sorry, this is Kyle.
Okay,
He's one of the principals of the company. Yes, that was the plan. I've got a quote to do so. Yes.
Do you know how far it would be, how much,
I've already got quotes, numerous quotes too.
not for the dollar value, but I'm talking about footage, do you know?
The length, I don't, not off the top of my head, but we are definitely going to council
okay.
and comply with whatever the fire chief needs or whomever to make sure that we're in compliance. We
Okay.
have every intention to do so.
Sorry, John, go ahead.
Let me ask you, I'm gonna actually, since I can ask either of you, but I suppose I can direct it to you directly.
Would you like Kyle to come up to the microphone?
If he's gonna answer more questions, yes. If he's not gonna answer anymore, he can stay there, but if he may, yes, please.
And if you can just identify yourself for the.
Sure. Kyle Seabeth, the owner of Elevated Properties.
Okay.
Just hearing what our council said with regard to the easements that are there currently. Any comment? I'm just curious if you have any thought or.
I totally agree with leaving them in place. We totally understand that they're there for a reason. We have no reason to fight any of the easements, nor to fight any of the fire chief's proposals for what needs to be done to make this lot conforming via variance.
So just to clarify, and Marguerite, maybe if you need to clarify what I asked, that being said, that means if this is approved and a house goes there, the abutters can cross onto that at any time
Perfectly.
for any reason.
We want them to be safe. We're not looking to do this to cause any problems.
So would a restriction then, if we were to put a restriction of no fence?
Sure, we don't need to put a fence. I have no intention to make anyone's life more difficult or cause any harm. We want to keep make sure we purchase the property with the intention to develop and make it better. And to give folks a better, instead of the eyesore that's there now, to give them something better to have in the neighborhood. Pretty simple. But yeah, we'll comply with whatever's in the variance.
Okay, Elise, I'll go to you and then I'll turn to other members, but Elise, you're the voting member. Do you have any other comments or questions?
I don't. I'm interested in listening to public comments.
Yep, I'll get there once I just go to John, Greg and then Dave.
I have a couple of questions. So I've driven by the property and I went by Bedford Street. I know you're saying you're gonna have, that isn't gonna be the means of egress possibly coming in on the other street, because there's a house directly on that line. On the left.
On the left side.
Yes, and I don't see an apparatus making that corner.
John, Greg, just for point of clarification, are you talking about the Abruzzi property or the,
Right here.
so yes, so the one that on our plan is showing as Abruzzi, Judith and Lawrence, he's talking about that parcel of land.
Yeah, and then it shows that the driveway is only what, 11.31
That's the current stance.
current standing as we go. But so we're gonna eliminate, if possible, we're gonna be eliminating the Bedford Street totally for utilities, everything.
But yeah, good question.
That's so, explain that question, ask that one more time.
So-
I don't understand what you're asking.
Right now, we were just stating that, again, I'm not a voting member, but I have a question and concern of the two means of egress into this property. Prospect Street and Bedford Street, you have two pieces coming into this one parcel.
Mhm.
You say you're gonna tie into sewer off of Prospect Street?
Correct. well,
Okay.
prospect.
That's a long run coming into the, by basing it off each one of these houses, okay, that's coming in there. So we are gonna abandon Bedford Street for any utility entry as well as an exit from this property.
We can't fully because the abutters have a right to use that. So if this stands, their easement, I would assume, allows them to use that. So Marguerite, does the applicant have, because it's in an easement and with the language, can they choose to close off one of those driveways or do they have to keep both of that's in their deeds as such?
No, the easements prohibit, they require both of those driveways entries to be used and available and
So
not.
they can't, Greg.
This one says no access. This one says.
That one
easement.
says access, right?
Right.
So right, on our plans now, again, the deeds could say otherwise, but according to what we've been provided, the Abruzzi property does not allow access.
Nor
But the
does the
Jackson
one-
property
nor-
does.
Nor does the
That's right.
Garcia Carlos.
Correct, the ones that are right.
So I believe the no access statement on the plans had to do with the fact that the deed for that property didn't reference an easement or a right of way. But maybe I was misreading the plan.
That's correct. Anywhere it says no access, the deed didn't contain easement language.
Correct.
I was confused too.
So
Yeah.
also what,
Yeah, that wasn't, we weren't
I
shutting
didn't know what you
off.
meant.
understandable. So, and while we're on that topic, you're showing the, so you have on the Bedford Street, that's where you're showing the 20 feet. Because the property line to property line is 20 feet. How long, how wide would the driveway be?
Well, the entrance coming in is 23.64 feet.
Okay,
We illustrated that 20 feet, if you recall at the last meeting, on the plan, it looked like it sort of bottlenecked a little there,
okay,
which I guess it does, it reduces. So we just wanted to make sure it had the 20 feet, which it did. So that was illustrated to show that, where that narrow piece, the narrowest part of that drive.
so the narrowest part of that drive is 20 feet and would be able to meet the fire apparatus.
Yes.
What about the Prospect side? Just because if that's the way that they come in, God forbid there's an emergency. Also, if there's an emergency at one of the abutters properties and the best way for the fire to get is to get in there, if the fire approaches from Prospects, and they can't get through and now have to go around to the Bedford side. I know we're talking seconds, but seconds matter. So are they able to go through the Prospect side?
Yes.
Okay.
This is to scale, that's the biggest.
It is, that's how it looks, but I just wanted that for clarification.
Of course,
Okay,
I could always get it noted on another plan if you'd like.
okay. John, I mean, Greg, do you have anything else?
So now you're gonna raise the garage closest to Prospect Street, right?
Correct.
All right, and then the garage and the existing structure is staying there, that's there now, the smaller garage and the existing structure.
I'm ideally correct.
Is that a single family home duplex?
It's a single family bungalow style.
So one owner,
Say that again?
one owner.
Yeah, one owner.
A little bit, just one family, it could be.
Mhm.
It's probably square footage wise, maybe 900 square feet total
For the existing structure?
for the existing structure, yeah. One slow garage.
So you still, this potential right of way that goes through the property for the easements, that's not proposed actually gonna be the driveway per se.
What do you mean?
For his new house, where the existing structure and garage is gonna be, doesn't show any radiuses coming into the property for a driveway into there. So the driveway, the existing, abutters line and the easement line that you see going around, it looks like that's a big circle going around. Is that already, the infrastructure already in on this property?
It's
Yes, yeah, it is. It is.
And the garage is like, kind of like, almost think of it like a shed. It's kind of pushed back a little bit.
Right.
The little one?
Yeah, it's called garage, but it's not.
Okay. And these are only 26 feet from the abutters property line, this existing garage, this one's getting raised, that's gone.
And the other, and from the other side, it's 22.
And it's 30.
Yeah, 38.
I get nothing else at this time.
Dave, do you have anything?
Well, we drove by there and we drove around and I just can't see all these abutters and having this one house in between all these other people that live around it. These poor people that live, you're gonna disrupt their livability. I just don't see it.
It's really kind of like down below though. The house is above on the.
No, we drove in there and we drove out each entrance and I just don't see it. It's a good thing I'm not a voting member. I just don't see it happening.
Okay.
Especially jumping through all these rings of fire that you're gonna have to jump through.
No pun intended.
Sorry. I digress.
No, I mean, no, I mean, so Marguerite, do you have anything else off the top of your head? Regarding anything?
Not at
about-
this time, no.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna turn it over to Butters comments. Just make sure you come up to the microphone if you have anything to state your name and address for the record. Whoever wants to go. If you're all just here, just more just for, that's fine, but anybody have any comments at this time?
Yeah, Robert Woods.
Sure. Sorry, if you don't mind. just-
Robert Woods, 158 Chase Street. You mentioned earlier that you had denied other people applying for the same thing, right?
Previous boards had years ago, yes.
Previous boards.
Yep.
So how do you think those people would feel? Right, they've been denied, and now these people are coming. Before, if you are gonna make a decision tonight, I surely hope you would postpone this and at least until the fire chief and the building inspector's here. The building inspector has definitely been against this from day one. The fire chief has valid concerns. The neighbors have valid concerns. There's been a problem over there for years, right? And I don't know how they got an address of 233R, because it was just a garage that belonged to the Lees. The Lees were the people that owned the house beforehand.
That's actually a good.
And when the Lees sold the home, they owned both. They owned the garages and the sheds in their house. But somehow they were able to subdivide it back when, I don't know when, but they were able to subdivide the property. So that's been just sitting there rotting and attracting varmints and, you know, nuisance animals and that kind of stuff. But all these other people that live on the street there, you know, their driveways are in the backyard. You know, I know the guy says he's gonna hook up the sewer, which is fine, because we could use his money for sewer. But I just don't see it.
Actually, Woody, while you're there, Marguerite, can you actually address that? Because the petition is for 233R, but their frontage can't be on Summer Street. It's gonna be either on Bedford or Prospect.
Again, that's the self-inflicted.
Yeah, I mean, I assume, again, all I have is the petition in front of me, but it probably relates a little bit to when these lots were merged at one point in time. I don't know what the parcel was known as before the merger occurred, but I wouldn't be surprised if the lot that it merged with, I have an old map reference. I haven't checked to see how that comports to the new map, but it was I assume that map reference was a Sumner Street property.
So that being said, I know this is a unique case. When we have before us a petition for 233R, if this were approved, it's not going to have a 233R address. Do we need a new submission or amendment saying that the front is going to have to, like, it's going to be a different address? Because we can't approve a 233R. There's not going to be a 233R.
Yeah, so the zoning board doesn't set the actual address. I'm not sure if that's done through only the assessor's office, but I think they're involved. I think
I know they are
fire
involved.
department are involved. So, you know, that would need to be clarified at the time that you're actually, the developer is actually going for a building permit, but, and
I'm
it's
glad
something
you
you
said
could
that.
condition, but I think that if you ask me where the 233R came from, it likely came from when the lots were merged and it
Right,
had yet
so-
to be separated.
With what he's saying about the fire chief, if we don't, regardless of how we should vote tonight, to have him come out and talk, he's the one that's going to say if he's part of or the decision making as to what the address is. That's going to determine what their main driveway is, obviously.
Yeah, I think if this ends up getting approved through a variance, I think that the fire department is probably going to need to be clear about not just what the address is, but also where the two different access points are, because depending on which direction the fire truck is coming from, they may want to try to access the property from the other access point, non-address access point.
Right. Do you have anything else?
You know, I reached out to the building commissioner,
Mhm.
and he's on vacation in Maine for a couple of weeks. But even he said, this is unbelievable. I never would have guessed that. 'Cause I told him, it looks like you guys are leaning towards favoring this. You know, in my opinion, from what I've seen so far. If it is approved, I'm gonna appeal it. Just so you know. Thank you.
Anybody else that wants to come up? Vicky, and I think you have. Oh, sorry. Either one of you, whoever wants to come first.
Yes, I sit down.
I'm Manuel Albert from 242 Bedford Street. I really feel bad for you. I've been living there for almost 25 years. And that property has always been a headache. One developer after another. The space is not there for a home. The worst, I'm farther out.
Yeah.
Garage is the store. I'd be happy knocking that down. But for the rest of the neighborhood, oh, they use the easements. My easement says I can run a mule on it, car or horse. You know, sometimes I drive my car back there, load up stuff from my shed, to take off. But this, I feel bad for the developer as a businessman, but it's not a place for a house. I mean, it's not. And I hate to say that, but it's not. And yeah, I know you have some money involved there. I tried to buy that piece of property a long time ago. They don't want crazy money. I want just to knock it, the woods go, clean the easement. I've been keeping up the sewer. There's a drainage port there. I've been keeping that clean for 20 years because if nobody does, it floods my neighbor's house and it just gets a mess. Right behind the house, but the little house there, the fella, I think his name was Toby, whatever his name was.
Alger, I think,
Yeah.
it was the last name.
Yeah, he started to build that, wiring wires and all that. Had a drainage system there. He buried it. It's a mess. And then you got the drainage systems going between two neighbors down the road into Bedford Street. It's just a no-win, and I feel a little bad for you as a businessman. But the place there is not for a house. Should be, town should have bought it a long time ago, cleaned it up, they had plans to clean it up, make a little park for kids to play, and done with it. And make a little paper street so everybody can utilize the paper street that goes like.
That is right there, yeah.
Thank you.
Vicky, I think you were next, and then I'll turn over to that side of the room, but Vicky, I think your hand was next. That's fine, that's fine. Don't worry about it.
My hips. Vicky Piazza, 221 Summer Street, North Dayton. I have a lot of this, it does need to be torn down. That was an illegally built house. And I think it was originally built as for the landscaping business.
I think so.
Only. The guys, my house, Laura's house, and behind. They were the ones that had the tools and the mowers and everything else that came with the business. I've been there since '99. And we, as the neighbors, have plowed it, snow blowed it, maintained it. This last week when we had the downpour, that road was from, I had this deep of water to go in, to drive out. And I go out on the Bedford side, which makes it easy. I'm on the bend. The other thing too is when they mark the property lines, my property line is marked wrong. Go over to the house. We start that between line and the next house in. They put it behind the stump. It's a tree, the middle of the tree. The surveyor did that wrong. And maybe about this much. But all the rest of my driveway goes all the way back. There's another house over there that they won't be able to park. And our garage is over there. And where do we have to park back there? We can't park out on the street.
If you, obviously, you have some disputes regarding your property line, which I would say we should be taken up, not taken up with, but, it's more just for the surveyor, but do you have, what concerns do you have about the proposal that's before us? Are you
I think the tree on the other side of the road, seeing as how I took down both. of the medical fell down, total. Those are old maples, they're over 120 years old.
But, okay, but, I mean, we can't get into that, but the tree on what side of the road? On the other side of Summer?
No, the tree on the property we're talking
Oh,
about.
that road, okay, okay, so the other side of the road, I wasn't sure, okay,
No, my trees were on the back road,
okay, oh, I see, okay.
because I park out back. And that's the one that fell down and fell on my car, on my deck. We saw it.
I've seen it.
And that tree is the same tree, they're all hollowed out.
But I mean, I'm just curious, what do those events happening, how does that affect your opinion on what's being presented before us, though?
I'm just making a point.
I know you are, but I mean, if it's not relevant to I mean, I'm just curious, do you have anything to say about the project?
I totally disagree with having that being used for anything else. I like to leave it and let it be green.
Okay. Anyone else have any other comments or questions?
Norman Corsi, 247 Summer Street,
Okay,
and we own the house there. My son lives in it. My grandkids are there a lot.
Mhm.
And even though he had great plans, in the perfect world, what he said may work. But it's so ridiculous to think of putting a house in danger. I don't know if you know, there's laws in the town. You can't leave your car out front of your house on Summer Street. You have to move it to the back. You know that, right? Okay. And in a perfect world, you never have a problem. In perfect world, all it takes is one car to spin out and get stuck back there. Now you lose life. I want your phone number and your phone number if that happens. Okay, if you're gonna push for this, which is ridiculous, think of where they're putting it. Who would ever put a house and endanger all these other people? I have a place on the property. If someone's doing something, I put a fence up or something, we can vote on it and say yes or no. Here we are with something might cause someone's life. And we got two people sitting here, I know why they're here. So it's, God bless them, they want to build it. They don't have to worry about our families, but we do. And I hope it doesn't end here. I hope we get a chance to speak and say how wrong this is. I grew up with the Perrys. I felt sorry for them for what they did. They were good guys. They were over in their grave that they knew these people were doing what they want to do. That's all I have to say.
Good job, Norman.
Anybody else? Anyone have more butters here? Don't feel like you have to speak. If you feel like, just here for more to hear what others have to say, that's totally fine. You don't have to, but
Kathy, you gonna say something?
you're all set from, okay.
Is it all right if I speak again, please?
Sure, yep.
All right, thank you. The Perrys that Mr. Corsi was talking about, I don't know if you might know them, Greg, but they were the ones who originally owned Lee's home,
Right.
right? So when they passed away, they gave it to the Lees. Lees were lucky people. But the service road that they're talking about was developed when the mill was in operation back in the day.
Right.
And the people that own the mill, they built the homes also. Okay, so when they designed the neighborhood, they designed it so those homes on Summer Street had their driveways and garages in the back, right? So it just made it easier for them when they used to service the houses back in the day when they used to bring coal, for your furnaces and other things that you needed to live back in the day. Because when J.K. Milliken ran the mill, he provided everything you needed. He had a hospital, he had a store, they would come and paint and wallpaper your home every 4 years if you worked at the mill. Nobody's painted my house since I bought it. But that's another story. When the Lees left and they subdivided the property, I already said that, but Several people bought it, and one guy actually bought it and went in there, and it was a garage, by the way. It was a garage to store all their landscaping tools and tractors and stuff that they use. It was never intended to be a home. It was always a garage with a couple of sheds. So, you know, after the lease subdivided it, some guy bought it, and he went in there and tried to build a kitchen and a bathroom with no permits whatsoever. And when the building inspector finally found out about it, he went down there, and sure enough, there was some half-ass cabinets and a sink. They had no running water. They had no electricity. They were stealing electricity with an extension cord from somebody's property. So this piece of property was never, ever going to be a home.
That, I'm glad you, because that actually reminded me of a question I wanted to have for Marguerite. So Marguerite, because what's there is an existing structure that was a house. Obviously, what they're doing is just, we're not demolishing, they're keeping the same footprint. If it was a legal house to begin with, how can they legally?
It was never a house, Zach. It was a garage.
So they're just calling it a structure.
It never
They're just
was
calling
a
it,
house,
so no one ever lived there.
ever.
It never
Except for
was.
some squirrels and
But so that it's technically, so it's called this, it's called a structure on the property, but on our plans, but if anything, it's another shed or garage, right, Marguerite? It's not. The plans say garage, and then existing structure. The existing structure is what's going to become, if it's approved, the house. But
Right,
so that, it's, so
So
how can we-
obviously, any structure that's on there would need to meet building requirements in order to become livable. However, again, we go back to my comment around the self-created hardship. The fact that there may be improved structures on that property, perhaps even, you know, a possibility that with further improvements, it could be livable, doesn't change the legal status of this property as having at one point in time merged with common ownership. So that means that it's no longer a pre-existing non-conforming piece of land. It is now subject to the zoning bylaws. And when they then subdivided it back out, they self-created their own hardship to create a parcel that didn't comply with all the zoning requirements. And that's just not allowed. That isn't a justification. When that happens, that's a reason that you could use as a zoning board to deny a variance, because variances can't be granted simply because somebody takes a piece of land that they own and they create a lot that's not conforming and they want to be able to use that lot in order to improve it and have it, you know, viable for purposes of putting on some type of a dwelling structure. You can't do that. You need to comply when you subdivide in order for it to be a buildable lot. You need to comply with the zoning requirements that then existed at the time that you subdivided it. And there was no way at this point in time back in 2003, and knowing who the owners were that were listed in your zoning decision back then, the Alger family, they did not, when they subdivided this property, they did not comply with the zoning requirements that existed in the town for frontage. And so they self-created a hardship here. And
So
it doesn't matter that there was a structure on the property already. That is not legally, that isn't a justification to avoid a self-created hardship.
Okay, so just to remind board members, I know two of which are new, I know at least newer, sorry. When we have the process for voting or denying, again, or making a vote on a case, we close the public input, we can deliberate and make a vote. After we deliberate, after we close the public input, we cannot receive any new information, we cannot receive any more comments, we vote on what we have before us. When it comes to denials, the procedure is, as a voting member and as chairman, I will say, is there a motion to approve? Should no one approve, and I hear silence, I would then ask, is there a motion to deny? And at one point, if you deny, you would say, if someone wants to approve, all three voting members must approve in order for this to go through. If one voting member does not approve, it is denied, because that's how our voting bylaws work. When we vote to deny, if that or approve, we must state our reasons why. Those reasons must comply to our bylaws and what our qualifications are for a variance. So that being said, I, as a voting member, do not need any more information to come in tonight. John, I know you're a voting member. You mentioned wanting to see updated plans. I do need to ask, what do you think new updated plans would provide you? Is it going to provide you, do you feel like you do not have enough information still to vote on this? If not, do you feel like new information is going to impact the decision either way?
I feel, first of all, thank you for your presentation, also for public for speaking. I do feel at this point, like I would like to see the plans more defined.
Can you please make that very clear as to what you want to see?
Yes, I would like to see more defined plans, specifically, for example, that show the driveway coming in, coming out, where it's gonna come from, where utilities are gonna be running. I'd like to see that laid out in a plan clearly. I would also like to hear directly from the building inspector, and because we have a lot of questions about the fire apparatus, I would like to hear from the fire chief
So
as well.
keep in mind, he did provide his comments. I don't know what more I'm not saying no, I'm just saying I don't know what more he's going to say.
Well, I guess I'm questioning, it seems like there's been some change.
There has not been change.
Okay.
He just, one of his comments was addressed in the 50-foot wide driveway.
Yep.
Is that possible? To which they have said, yes, it is. It's not a change, it's more, they made that clear.
They define.
Nothing changed from the last plans that we
I
saw.
guess maybe because I can't see it.
Yep, that's fine. No,
It's,
that's fine. There were no change.
okay.
The new plans they submitted
Yep.
showed the easements, which showed, by that I mean which properties had one and which didn't. They don't physically show the easement. They just say which properties have them, which ones don't. And then
I would also like to hear from as I said, the building commissioner.
what do you feel like he's going to provide?
I think I'd like to hear what the building commissioners,
This is, we don't usually talk to him before we hear it. I'm just curious why.
I'd like to hear from him what his position is on, whether he could grant an occupancy permit, what it would require for him.
I mean, he was at our January meeting. He did not say I wouldn't be able to,
I understand.
but I feel like if he couldn't, he would have said it that night.
I guess the bottom line is I think I need a little more time to think about it too. I don't feel comfortable making a decision yet. I'm concerned about, you hooking up to town water and sewer. I don't know if there's still a moratorium in effect or not. Or if that's been lifted. I don't know if anybody knows off the top.
No, it's not Dayton, it's not on
Okay.
that.
All right.
But I can help with a couple of things, Jonathan.
Go ahead.
Okay. First off, the applicant came in and is calling for the applicant to go into 233 Summer Street. There is no way to this property from that. So that's a problem right out of the way to me. I'm not a voting member. I understand your hardships and what you're asking for. He's got a large parcel here, and as Woody has stated about the Millikins, I've heard this entire story from an older gentleman years ago about this whole property. This piece was never intended to be what it was. The hardship was done from the prior owner before this gentleman bought it. It was split and divided, and that was a problem. So they've created their own hardship. This has been denied prior, and that they're here again asking us for relief of what was already denied for, with no change except for raising the garage. There was work being done on the property. Now, not saying the applicant
No.
is here is doing it. And that's what got Jim, the building inspector's attention on the project.
Right.
So that being said, I mean, those are the
I
things
guess-
that I think you're trying to get the answers from.
I am.
You know what I mean?
And I'm hearing what Marguerite, our council, has said with regard to the hardship as well.
Yeah.
I just personally feel as though when you consider what we have to look at when we make a vote, providing hardship of the shape topography of the land is number one. Is there a hardship? Yes. Was it self-created? Not by this owner, but yes. I personally don't know. We're showing where the driveway is going to be. How will that change that? We don't always say, over this plan, we need to see the driveway. I just don't know the only issue with the driveway is both are going to be used, both still have to be used. whether where the driveway is and what the driveway is, that's gonna be up to fire and up to the building inspector if this is approved. So them providing it, in my opinion, I don't know why that could affect your vote, that's
I
all.
guess I'm just also concerned about drainage. I'm thinking of drainage as well.
But we don't consider drainage when we're looking, we have to look at what's before us,
Only
John.
on front of us
Well, I
for
mean,
a variance.
the other thing that is, as Greg mentioned, is the address.
Again, that's not our
I know,
concern.
I'm just.
I feel like in the
Well, I
past,
do-
when,
I
in the
do
past
think
when we've
it is
done
our
this.
concern,
I think
because
that
I
is
think
like-
this right here, we shouldn't even be hearing the case.
Well, that's why I asked Marguerite on
Bottom
that.
line.
That's why I asked Marguerite on that, is so like, if we have before us a 223R,
Where is it?
which it can't happen, where do we go from there? And she said that it would be up to at that point, up to the bill, up to, we think, the assessors and the fire to make that determination. So that being said, we can't.
But I wouldn't feel comfortable approving something or disapproving either way, voting on something when we don't exactly know.
But it wouldn't be it's not up to us to decide at that point. Whether we know or don't know, they could say we want it on Bedford. We make the vote and assessors and fire goes, no, it has to be Prospect. How does that affect our vote? We can't be voting on, well, we need to know what the address is. No, we don't. I just don't.
Except that the application was submitted with a specific address.
But Marguerite said that's not enough of an issue for us to not hear it. So we can still be hearing it.
So-
I do. That's why I asked her at
I
first.
disagree with that. That's my opinion, okay? Because if an applicant comes in with an address on this piece of paper, nowhere on this thing does it show Summer Street.
Yes.
Nowhere.
Marguerite, can you address that? Where we stand legally on that? It's a good point, but I'm just, what do you say?
So the application contained both an address, mailing address, and a map and lot designation. The map and lot designation is consistent with the assessor's record and defines this parcel.
So they
The
had to use
address-
that.
What's that?
They had no choice but to use that as their applicant's address.
Well, so
sorry,
that
that's-
address, I think, was preset in the assessor's office, and I don't know why, I'm speculating here, but I believe it was likely because at one point in time, this parcel was owned by whoever also owned 233
And
Street,
they subdivided it though.
right?
And at that point.
And when they subdivided it, they didn't change the mailing address at that time, but the parcel itself still was created in the assessor's records, and that parcel is what you would use to define this property. I mean,
Which would have
you
nothing,
could-
it's how we define the property. It's not how we determine the frontage. It's not how we determine the address. It's
No,
how
the-
we determine the application before us and how the parcel.
frontage element, so the
Frontage,
frontage
yeah,
piece is about how much of a variance are you granting?
It would
And
be-
you're going to
it-
be granting a variance that brings it down to less than the 55 feet that they originally presented to you. It has to bring it down to one of those two amounts. Sorry, again, I'm toggling back and forth between.
Yeah, I guess the biggest holdup I have about asking for updated plans is that in the past, when we've done this, there have been times where I'm like, I don't think we got anything new, but okay. And then there are times I'm like, that's great. If we had known that the first time, we would have felt X, Y, and Z. I don't know what new plans could come. Like, I don't know what more you want them. I know what more you want them to provide. I don't understand. I need some more help on this, on prolonging this again to see an update of where the driveway is. I don't think is going to help. I don't see how it would help a decision, John. I really don't.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little baffled with the address too, because who would give an address to a garage?
But I don't, that's wherever the assessors, I guess, did way back when. It was, I mean, it could have been 50
And I'm
years ago.
pretty sure it's the building commissioner who gives out the addresses.
Oh, it's the post office.
So but either way, I mean, it's,
Well, I mean, so you have properties in this town that are, zero, they have zero as the number. So it's 0 Chase Street, for instance.
right.
That is established in the assessor's records. Whether or not there was ever an actual mailing element to this, I don't know if the post office ever delivers mail to that address. I mean, I don't know the full history of how this address came about. I do agree that there's a concern about this address remaining as 233R Summer Street. It needs to be reviewed and determined by at least the fire chief. I would say the assessor's office should be involved. I think it would be a good idea for the building inspector to be involved. They may need to talk to the post office as well. I don't know, but there needs to at least be a review of it.
Now,
If
that's
it's
only
going
if we
forward.
approve.
If
But
it's
if we approve.
approved. Again, you don't necessarily need to hold up a vote tonight simply because the address isn't known, because the map and lot is known, and you can act on this based on the map and lot information.
Elise, how do you feel?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you.
Do you feel?
I've heard enough to vote.
I have too. John, I guess to be fair, I really need to know, as a board member and a chair, why you feel the need to prolong this another month for new plans.
I guess, I don't have an exact answer. I just don't feel comfortable.
Then I don't feel comfortable asking them to do that.
Okay, then if we're gonna vote, we're gonna vote.
If you don't have exact answer, it's certainly not.
I'm being honest, I don't have a specific, beyond what I've said already, I don't have anything specifically.
I do feel like the first time around, we wanted to know.
Yep.
You said there is 20 feet, please show us 20 feet.
Yep.
I can understand that. But the driveway, the drainage, those aren't things that we take under consideration. It's not anything that, or I should say, it's not anything that they can show us on a plan. We know.
The other thing that I take under consideration is that I'm hearing what council said as well with regard to, the request for hardship as well.
That's the number one thing we should be considering. It's not, I know we should factor in a butter input, we should be factoring in safety. I feel like we have a butter input.
Yep.
I feel like we've heard from fire and the hardship. I don't see what other elements here.
The biggest thing.
Still
for me-
stand.
The biggest for me is what council said with regard to hardship. And
you feel like that's not obvious? Or you feel like you need more on that?
I'm saying, I think that is obvious.
Okay, so therefore you don't feel like you don't need anything new at this point?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Margaret, do you have any final comments? Keep in mind, we can deliberate. We just can't, once you close the public input, we can continue to deliberate, or if we're ready to make our vote, we can. I just can't take anything new at that point. So Marguerite, do you have anything new that you would, not new, anything else to say?
I mean, all I would suggest is that the board give the petitioner an opportunity to address anything that they've heard before you close the public.
I was going to, yes, yeah.
But other than that, I don't have anything more to add. Thank you.
Okay, so do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Again, I think the address issue it's really not an issue. It's just the way the property is identified. It's
Yep.
a way for us to file without identifying the way the town identifies it.
Mhm.
There's deeds, there's plans that show where it is. So I think it's properly identified as far as a notice standpoint of people knowing what the property is.
Okay,
As far as Mr. Gale's concerns on an updated plan, we'd be happy to do that. We can put more detail on that. Safety issues, obviously they're, Mr. Seabock and his partner are not trying to make this unsafe. And
no, I wouldn't expect that you would, we didn't think that you would intentionally be doing that or not care. It's just a matter of, are the things that we're able to do that possible?
right, and it would be professionally engineered. This isn't, they're not a fly by night. They're gonna, the project would be done right. On the hardship piece, and maybe I could confirm with council if this was continued, would be, I don't know Marguerite's opinion on it, that there is some case law where lots can't merge if there's a way in between them. I mentioned this last time, I think at our first.
So, I'm sorry, can or can't merge? Can't merge.
The case law I was looking at, Marguerite, I know Johnson and Casper, Warden, Town of Bourne, where these were paper streets, but they would say you can't merge a lot when there's an actual way. Now, in this case, it says a way, a driveway that's cutting through where this, where the Alders did that subdivision and that merger took place. I believe it's a lot of looking on the plan that says, I think it's now Doherty. I think it's a condo there.
Okay.
It says no access, and then obviously our lot. You can see where the way or the driveway was there. So, I mean, perhaps an opportunity for me to confer with counsel and,
So
you know, we might have that legal argument if you know, if she disagrees.
I'm gonna turn that to Marguerite right
So I
now.
was just gonna ask that before you do that, Zach. I know where Zach's going with this, and what I'm hearing you say is potentially, rather than have a vote tonight.
This was raised, you know, Marguerite opined on it. I think there is some case law that discusses the lack of merger when there's a way through in between the lots. Again, if you can picture more of the case I said was a paper street, right? So those two lots couldn't merge. You know, if I could have an opportunity to maybe write to her and present that legal argument, because that seems to be at least the major sticking point from the legal elements of a variance versus some of the on the ground items like the fire and safety, the structure and the address.
Marguerite, can you address that?
I mean, I'm always happy to take a look at anything that the board authorizes me to review in terms of a legal argument, and to try to do that ahead of time before the board votes, I think there's never anything wrong with you having more information. I will say that my initial response and thought on this is that it appears to me on most of the plans that I'm not necessarily disagreeing with your comment about you can't have a merger if there's a way in between, but you're talking about a driveway versus a paper street, and those are very different types of land items. And a paper street is, you know, recorded and doesn't have ownership elements in the same way that a driveway would. So the driveway is all part of the parcel. You just happen to have this driveway subject to easements by abutting landowners. But I don't believe in anywhere that I've seen in the history of this lot that driveway is known, excuse me, as a paper street.
It's not.
And so I would really be interested in not just taking a look at any cases you find around a way or a paper street being a reason for lack of merger. I'd be interested in anything you would find also on whether or not a driveway could prohibit a merger from happening. I don't believe that there's any restriction in that situation. And I do think this lot has merged.
And I will say, personally, even if that were to come before us, there are, like, even if we did have a case, there's still years of history of this being denied. And I feel like if there wasn't enough case law for that, no, I shouldn't say that. Even if there is case law to come before, to me, I'm going to have a hard time taking that over the years of history that this was denied. That's how I feel. I'm sorry, but I can't all of a sudden say, oh, well, if that one time there or the 3 times that there was, now I think I'm for it. I personally don't feel that way. So I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that would be able to or could be able to provide it, but I can't confidently say that would change how I feel. I mean, but again, John, I don't know if it would for you, but I'm just one voting member. But like I said, I feel like I have everything I need tonight to make a decision. I feel like Elise does too, and we have to find a way to not find a way. We need to wrap this up.
I think I hear what council is saying. I do about wanting a chance to go back with our council and share information, but I also think that there has been opportunity for that.
That's how I feel too. I mean, proving hardship is one of our first things that we have.
Say, Mr. Chair, this is the first time I got to, dialogue with council. Wasn't at the first meeting, understandably so. Again, if the board would be willing to give me that opportunity, that'd be great. And then again, at the same time, I could, if you'd want, for Mr. Gale's request, put some updates on that plan, at least give you the full picture, and council can at least opine back on whether that merger argument works. I didn't see it made in that prior decision. I wasn't a party to that case. I don't know. I'm sure my reasonable and accomplished attorney, and I don't doubt her her opinion, but
And
I just don't, I wasn't a part of that case, so I just can't opine on what was discussed beyond what was in that decision.
to be completely frank, an applicant's due diligence should be to provide the reasons of hardship and for why, regardless of the case's history. We typically do not have our attorney here. If she wasn't here tonight, we don't, part of our procedure is not to have the attorneys talk and discuss this. This is information that should have been brought before us already. So keep in mind, when a client's, applicants talk to attorney, that's a dime on the town for legal bills. I'm not going to personally allow our legal counsel to rack up our leading bill to help plead your case for you, or to show you why or why not. We're talking hours of review for her, or hours, a certain allotted time of review for her. That's under the zoning board's dime to potentially help the applicant. If we were very unsure and there was no previous case history of the zoning board denying it, then I could see why. But I don't know what new information, what could be provided. And I'm certainly, personally, I'm not going to allow the attorney to rack up our dime on that.
Thank you, Jack. And let's not be intimidated by case law.
Well, right.
I know, just to point out, I did raise that at the first hearing, just to be clear, I don't want to try to sound like I just brought this up today. I did bring it up at the first hearing. I know it was several months ago, but I did raise that, brought it up affirmatively to the board on that argument. So I wasn't in any way trying to ignore the prior decision, and even.
No, I knew you weren't trying to ignore it, but.
And I did raise this argument, just now counsel was here, so I thought it wise to raise it with her.
Okay, voting members, do you have anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
I'll second.
No, I mean, I should be able to speak.
Can you say this one?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
End of the day, there's an existing structure. If you've been in the structure, there's a kitchen, there's a bathroom, there's 2 bedrooms, there's a garage underneath, there's another garage to the side. I've walked it, I've been in it. It's a nuisance property that is causing, I mean, if that's what these folks would rather look at and have around their property, then that's their decision. But never was this brought to my attention at all during the process of purchasing the property or getting ready to renovate the property or anything to that nature. So from my end, it's extremely frustrating to stand here and to listen to some of the things that folks are saying. And then even more importantly, it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, walks like a duck. It's a duck. And when you look at this property and you walk it and you go into it, it resembles every single 900 square foot bungalow I've ever walked through, and I've sold thousands. So to have that, some of the arguments that have come up, in my opinion, are a little kind of off the rocker.
Which arguments?
Some of the things about someone driving and causing someone to be killed in the accident. Of the other argument of a woman's tree falling on her car. Another argument of.
And I agree, and that's why I kind of.
It didn't really.
I kind of curbed that discussion because it wasn't relevant. It's important, but not relevant to our decision.
Right, and at the end of the day, I think when you look at the property and you see everything that we put forward, we're willing to work with you to whatever needs to be done to get this structure to be rehabbed and look nice and not be an eyesore. But if this were to get denied, you're just gonna have a really ugly structure with rats and varmints and other stuff, and you're not getting anywhere fast.
That is one thing that I actually mentioned to Greg about that. I mean, Butters, that's a valid comment. Keep in mind, I know a lot of your complaints are how everything is, it's an eyesore, it's this, it's that. If this is not approved, it stays the way it is. If it's approved, there'll be a house there, but it will be cleaned up. It's a valid point. I mentioned it to Greg. I can show you. I even said, wouldn't cleaning up the property that would be the only way it's done. So I guess it's the Butters impact is huge on this.
I mean, not only that, the driveway gets paved, the sewer line gets brought in.
So that isn't a question for the Butters. I mean, a lot of your concerns.
Doesn't help any of the homeowners.
I'm talking about the property being cleaned up.
Clean up of the property, the driveway, we're talking about when I purchased it, I actually cut down probably $10,000 worth of brush and trees and stuff, just so you could see the house.
So, right, so if we deny it,
Huh?
it's gonna stay the way it is. I'm not saying that's, I'm
It's
just.
gonna get worse, it's not gonna stay the way it is. It's going to get worse.
Correct, it won't be better.
No.
It's your neighborhood, not mine. So I don't, yeah, yep.
You know what, just out of curiosity, I know this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but
If it's sidetracked, John, I can't go down the road.
I just wanted to ask the abutters a question, since we're still.
Is it unrelated to the question that I just asked them?
Well, you made a comment about the cleanliness.
I'm asking them if they feel like, if they understand that the property would stay the way it is or get worse. It's their, again, it's their literal backyards, not mine.
Because what will happen is now there will be a suit against the folks that gave me title insurance to purchase the property, right? There may be some stuff coming with the town. There's going to be a lot more. This thing's just gonna sit there. However, if we get the approval, I can get on this right away. I can pay the driveway, I can connect the sewer, I can side the house, I can get everything done so that your yards and your backyard or your front yard or whatever looks as something that's aesthetically pleasing.
Are you threatening us?
No.
I'm not doing it at all.
Yeah, what did you mean what did you mean by suits? Good question.
What I mean by suits is that I was sold a bag of goods that obviously now at this point is determined that it's, if that's the way you vote, that is not worth it.
But that wouldn't be against the abutters, that'd be against.
I didn't say it against.
Okay, well, she wanted to clarify, that's all I was doing.
I didn't hear that.
I just wanted to clarify because she had a valid question, I wasn't sure either.
That makes sense.
Okay, I want to answer your question for you. So, abutters, that's, hold on, I have an abutter, what?
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Okay, you represent us. I think you've done a great job through the years. I say, if we're not gonna hire a lawyer to support us as abutters, I trust your judgment. I like to bring it to a vote tonight.
that's what I'm looking to do too.
Can we do that?
I mean, so there was a motion on the floor to
It saves us a lot of money and time and aggravation.
close the public input on it. They had another comment. So I'm going to go back to that. Is there a motion on the floor to close the public input for this case?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Forget who the public is.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I, Zachary Karen,
Jonathan Gale.
Motion to close
the public input, yes, okay. John, roll call, please. I, Zachary Karen,
Jonathan Gale, aye.
Elise Vincent.
I, Zachary Karen, only us three came with voting members. Okay, is there any more deliberation? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the case before us tonight? Again, Elise is on Zoom. Again, if it's a denial, I'll need silence and then I'll ask for denial. If it's an approval, I'll need to hear an approval. Elise, I know you're on Zoom, so I'll give you a few seconds if you're saying otherwise. Is there a motion to approve the case tonight? Hearing no comments, is there a motion to deny? I'm a board member, I, Zachary Karen.
Aye, Jonathan Gale.
Elise Vincent, at this point, if you. It was that way, a little choppy. Can you please repeat that?
Who you asking to approve
I
that?
agree with the motion to deny.
Okay. That being said, the case has been denied. Carrie,
You mean the reasons?
okay, right. My biggest thing was the self-created hardship that was mentioned. Also, when you're talking about a request for a variance and from our frontage, it's significant regardless of what driveway they use. Going from 125 to something less than 30 is a very, very big, significant change. John, what are your reasons for denial?
Prior history of self-created hardship.
Elise, can I have your reasons for denial?
Self-created hardship. And there's the frontage is the driveway. There's really no frontage.
Okay. All right. That being said, that's the case. Okay, public, just so you know, we do have one more case that we're hearing tonight. Marguerite, you're still there?
I am, yes.
I do not need your input on the kennel applicant, but I do have a question for you regarding Stonegate, so I'm just gonna take that out of order. So you're here for that, but then you're all set after that.
Okay, I think you need a motion to take it out of order.
I will. I just wanted to make sure that I just didn't want you to go anywhere yet. That's all.
No problem.
Okay, so I know you guys weren't fully hearing. So, the topic tonight regarding Stonegate Landing, I do need Marguerite's input on something. We don't need her for the Michelle White case, so I'm gonna take that out of order so she can go after we're done with that. So I make the motion that we take the agenda item out of order 6I and review Stonegate Landing LLC first. Not first, but before Michelle White's.
So move.
Is there a discussion?
No,
All in favor?
I,
Aye, Zachary Karen.
Hi, Greg Logan.
Hi, Jonathan Gale.
Hi, David Phillips.
Elise Vincent.
Okay, so Marguerite, the biggest thing for this was we're not discussing anything tonight. However, there was a correspondence with Richard saying he was attending the next meeting. When it comes to the fact that he has said, when we're addressing outstanding funds, he has said, I'll provide XYZ funds, or I'm sending a check XYZ, along with this confirmation of coming to the meeting. This time he has confirmed coming to our next meeting, but still has not provided any kind of response to the outstanding funds. That being said, do you feel as though we as a board, through any way, should be requesting that officially in writing? We've done it through email and heard literal no comments regarding it.
So if you're asking me if I could send him a letter, I certainly can, although I think it's just as equally efficient if it came from you. It can be sent by email, it can be sent by certified mail, it can be sent by regular mail, all of that. I can absolutely write a letter on behalf of the board, though, to reiterate what has been sent to him about the funds that are overdue, the payments that were made.
Carrie's done it through email so far and has done an outstanding job and been very, very clear. I don't feel as though we need you to do it over her. My question was more like, do you think that we should be sending something through certified mail at this point rather than email?
So I think if you're going to send it something by certified mail, the reason to send it is to ensure that it's been received.
Correct.
That could be done through a read receipt. I don't know, Carrie, if you've been putting read receipts, you do often. Have you been putting read receipts on these emails?
Yes, I do.
But keep in mind, on my point of view, there have been times where like she's requested it and I've had notification saying the sender has asked for a receive request. Do you approve? I don't know if other emails give that option. Some emails might, like if he has a Gmail or something, but I have Outlook/Hotmail, and I can see that and say yes or no. I don't know if he has that option. Therefore, he may have seen it and said no. He might not even be able to even acknowledge it. So that's the only thing about the send receipt aspect for email.
So I'll make two comments. First of all, Carrie, have you gotten a read receipt from Mr. Fedorov?
No.
Okay. Makes me think he's either hit deny or is not able to do it either way.
My second comment is that the email that he responded to today, telling the board that he will be attending in June, was in response to the email that very clearly indicated that there was money owed.
Exactly. And if in the past he hasn't said, yes, I'll bring it, I wouldn't think anything of it, but he's always said when funds have been addressed, yes, I will bring it. I'll put in the mail. I'll bring it with me that day. It's coming. He said
100%.
nothing about it. That's why I was like, well, he said he's coming, but this time hasn't mentioned anything, even though the email was not so much, are you coming? It was, where's this money? Or we need this money.
May I ask the question?
Yeah, sure.
He actually stopped payment on two payments. I mean,
That's correct.
that's outrageous, and I don't know why
That's correct.
we're holding his hand and walking
So
through.
those are all the pieces that you'll need to ask him when he comes before you.
Right.
And so I don't know the answer to why he did that.
The only deliberation I want to have tonight, and Carrie, and it's more actually Carrie's the one that said, should we have Marguerite on? Carrie, was that the question that you were looking for?
Yeah,
For Marguerite?
if we should be sending something more like certified return receipt this time around, just to get try and get the funds.
We just wanted your opinion. If you had said, no, I wouldn't bother,
Sure.
or like,
So to finish my thought on that, number one, I think that the read receipt is a good idea. certified mail return return requested is also a good idea, and so is regular mail. And the reason I'm going to suggest all three is that very often certified mail goes uncollected.
Yep.
If it's sent by regular mail, then you have a chance that at least that you're not waiting on the signature for them to open it. So you've got both ways. And then the email piece with the read receipt, again, will just simply provide a third option for you to say that it was sent to him. And if he responds to it, it appears that he's received it. Whether he answers the read receipt or not, it appears that he's received that email.
Okay.
I would also recommend, as I have with Carrie, that these mailings go not just to Mr. Fedorov, but to Mr. Tardanico too.
Yes.
By certified mail, by regular mail, and by email with a read receipt.
Should it go before the assessors as well? I'm sorry, the tax collector, because she's the one, we only were talking about the first fund that we were missing was the update the 53G account. Then we heard about the back taxes.
I don't think we can do anything.
We can't do anything about that one?
I
Okay,
think that's up to the tax collector.
okay. So then it should be clear then, right, Marguerite, that in whatever correspondence we say, should not mention the taxes amount, because that's, as much as it's relevant and
I would
A big thing,
continue
it's
to
not up
send
to
what
us.
Carrie has been sending.
Okay.
The piece around the outstanding taxes will prohibit him from obtaining future permits of any.
right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think we need any motions on this, correct? I don't see why we would.
Well, other than to continue it to, it's not really a public hearing, but to.
So
you
we
can make
don't
a
really need-
motion to schedule it for the meeting on June 24th.
Right, it's not, we don't have an application before us that we need to continue, so it's more just, if anything, it's more review, discuss and act, but I know it's what your headings always are, but if anything, it's more review and discuss,
Update.
not so much act in this case, okay. Okay, so Margaret, I think that's all that we have. We're all set. Thank you
Okay,
so much for
thank
being
you
here
all.
tonight.
I'll see you on in
Good
June.
Bye, Marguerite.
Bye.
Okay, our next and last case. We have Michelle White, for the record, on the, sorry, can I read this? Yeah, we have Michelle, sorry. We have Michelle White, as is printed on the agenda, is 2771 William Street, map 19, lot 14, for special permit and variance application. I want this known for the public. The address is 2117 William Street. The notice that went out to the abutters and the Gazette states the incorrect address. For the record, 2771 does not exist. That's not a location. That being said, I did have a discussion with town council, zoning board council beforehand, and then with Carrie, and then with the applicant, telling her that she can have just two options. One, that we continue, not continue. We hear the case tonight as it's written, under the understanding that you may have an applicant, an abutter that says, I did get your notice, because to make that clear, I should back up a little bit. The correct abutters were notified.
Correct.
She went by the abutters list of 2117. It's not like there were abutters who didn't get this. It's not like there are abutters who, weren't considered. The only thing is that did an abutter look at this, say 2771, this is nowhere near me. I don't need to go tonight. To which, is it possible? Absolutely. So then at that point, I said to the applicant, keep in mind, that could be something that comes up. Marguerite did say, you have the right to hear this tonight. There's nothing wrong with hearing it tonight. Sometimes she'll say, you put the wrong date. Abutters weren't notified. They're gonna come a different day. You can't do that. She said you can, but it's just be very clear about the incorrect address. So we can absolutely hear it tonight, or we could continue it. The applicant has chosen to go through with this tonight. As well as Marguerite did say that we're good to hear tonight. And just keep that in mind when we're going over the case. Now, before I have three voting members, you have a statement real quick you wanted to state?
Yes, I am in a butter. I have to recuse myself.
Okay, so that being said, just for people who don't know, if you are a voting board member, one of the biggest things is the conflict of interest. If you are a direct abutter, you must recuse yourself from the case, because if you're in a butter, you have financial stake onto your property, which can be determined based on what an abutter does. Therefore, he can't be a voting member on this case. He can be, as of right now, he's a member of the public. Any of his comments that he makes, if he has anything, are to be taken the way any other abutter would with no implication that he is a voting board member. We don't have this happen too often, but in this case that we do. That being said, Michelle White, whenever you are ready, we do need to come to the microphone. She did provide, I have to read the notice as it was printed.
You want voting members?
Yes, please, John.
You need to do that first.
Sorry.
So for the voting members, as the clerk, I'm gonna have Zachary, Greg, and Elise.
Thank you. So what's before us tonight, guys? We have it, the legal notice says, notice is hereby given. And the Dayton Zoning Board of Appeals will conduct a public hearing at Old Town Hall on 1111 Somerset Ave, Dayton, Mass. On Tuesday, May 27th, 2025 at 7 p.m. on the special permit and variance application of Michelle White for property located, again, as written, 2771 William Street, which is actually 2117, being shown as Assessor's Map 19, Lot 14, pursuant to Section 2230, Use Regulation Schedule, and Section 6 definitions of the Town of Dayton's residential and agricultural district on a property less than 2 acres of land. Said property is a residential and agricultural district. You provide a letter for us. Do you want to read that tonight, or do you want me to read it into the record? Sure, okay.
We have a motion to open the public.
Oh, so can I have a motion to public hearing for the case? Zachary Karen.
Hi, Jonathan Gale.
Hi, Greg Logan.
Okay.
Consent.
Okay. So, the notice that she provided, which I don't have it for me, is she provided all the application in our packets. She has an aerial photo of the land, which I'm so glad that was done because applicants don't do this and it's so helpful. Quote unquote, I am seeking to be zoned as a commercial kennel in a residential and agricultural district. I need this status so I may obtain a home business license in the town of Dayton. My home business would be called the Happy Doodle Doo Club, an exclusive playground for doodles. Only up to 4 doodles would be permitted for each 2.5-hour time slot. The time slots are Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. and Saturdays from 12 to 2:30 p.m. As the play group hours would be after rush hour, we don't expect any impact regarding traffic flow during the week. Additionally, there would only be ever up to 4 cars per time slot, and they would be staying for no more than 5 minutes to drop off and pick up. The play group is limited only to doodle breeds of dogs, Golden Doodle, Labradoodle, Bernie Doodle, etc. I've heard the first 2, but not that one. There will never be any other breed of dog permitted, so there will never be any threat of danger from any excessive or dangerous breeds. Doodles by nature are not prone to aggression. There will be an outdoor playtime in the fenced area of our backyard, which is outlined on the site map. Outdoor playtime will consist of free play, fun agility training, tennis ball launchers, kiddie pools, etc. Doodles need lots of mental stimulation, so the backyard will be a place for them to be challenged intellectually as well as physically. When they get tired, they'll go indoors where they rest on soft dog beds, get a good brushing, belly rubs, organic gourmet treats, and lots of personal attention. Often, when we hear the word kennel, it can evoke unpleasant mental images. Though I'm requesting a kennel status, this will not be a place to have dogs come and stay. It will be a place where the ratio will be 1 person to 2 doodles, so the dogs can receive all the attention they want. Doodles love people even more than other dogs. They crave human interaction, so this will not be a quote-unquote dumping place for dogs. It will be like Doodle Disney World. Do you have anything you want to add before we open up the questions, or?
No, that's.
Okay. To me, it seems like a technicality in the sense that she has to be called a kennel.
Well, it's just, it's all been in there, and plus we just were rewriting for small businesses.
I can't believe you said that, because when I was talking that to Carrie, I was like, coincidentally, what do we have before us tonight?
What about, now, see the fenced play area, so the fenced area, how tall is that fence gonna be roughly?
The part that would keep them in the yard is 6 feet, and then
Oh.
some of it will be 4 feet picket, just to keep them from falling off. We have like a tall wall.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that piece
Yeah.
there, so yeah, so you're not coming to the corner for obstruction of the
No,
cars, okay, yeah.
I understand there's gonna be a very limited number of cars. Does what you currently have on your property will that suffice for the cars that's coming, or are you making changes to the parking?
No, it suffices, yeah. We have
Okay,
a large parking area, and then even on Main Street, there's an area where cars can park for a couple of minutes.
right, okay. Greg, do you have any other questions?
Well, like I say, it's funny because this whole packet we just was going through is about small businesses coming into town. Obviously, you know, we have the officer from the dog catcher, and she's gonna want to put her input on this, but I like the idea of having something like this in our town, and I think it'll be a great thing.
Yeah, it's the only hold I would, if it was gonna be overnights and it was gonna be like,
Then again, now. it's
I'd be
not-
like, whoa, but it's not at all what's looking to be done. It's not what's looking to be done. Elise, do you have anything else? Anything else? Do you have any more comments? Sorry.
It's just, how do you get rid of the waste, the dog?
That's a good question. So we will have a barrel outside, and there are companies that have been researching that will come and pick it up bi-weekly. So that's how we're gonna remove the waste.
And it's funny, as that does seem like a question, like, why does that matter? When we come to special permits, that is something that we can absolutely consider.
Right.
And usually if this was a special, a variance, it's
It was
not
just brought up
relevant. It's not
Brought up
relevant.
About waste, how you're gonna get rid of it.
Right. In this case, it is relevant to ask that question because impact to the area would certainly be one. If she's like, we're not sure yet, I would have said, well, we'll see how that goes. But so that being said, I will then turn it over to any town officials that have any comments.
I have talked to Michelle and we've gone over my concerns. I guess my biggest concern is if you say it's okay for her to have a kennel, a commercial kennel, you haven't inspected it like I'm supposed to inspect it and that kind of stuff. I think what comes before you should be the variance. The commercial kennel part of it should come through me. I need to go out and inspect and make sure she's got the fence, make sure she's got places that dogs can go and hide if it's too hot, make sure she's got enough water bowls, make sure she's got enough this and that. And she's got everybody's rabies vaccine and all that kind of stuff.
I'm actually glad that you said that because when I was talking to Carrie about this, actually, and town council, they were like, why the variance and why the special permit?
Okay, the variance is because she doesn't have enough land.
Land, right.
Now, see, this, I went to Kerry and after Board of Health was supposed to send it to me, they never did. I got it through another town official and he sent it to me and he said, why weren't you invited?
That was my next question was.
And I says, I don't know why I wasn't. I says, because really, they don't have anything to say to do with a commercial kennel, because now we have in writing in our kennel bylaw, it says, because of the property she has the right to have a residential kennel.
Right.
Now, the commercial kennel is completely different. Now we've got all this law and all that kind of stuff that plays into that, but we've talked about that also. So the kennel part of it shouldn't even come before.
I agree.
What should be is the variance.
I'm sorry, just to clarify though, there's only two granting authorities that can grant a special permit for a kennel. That's either it can't be the Board of Health.
No, but it's not a special permit.
It is in our bylaws though.
It's a commercial permit.
In our bylaws.
Is a residential, when we changed the bylaw, we changed everything.
We actually have it right here.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I mean, it's valid.
As a commercial, because in our under our kennel, in the bylaws, underneath kennel, where it's right now, commercial kennels in there.
Right, but under our appendix A, under commercial number 4, animal clinic or hospital or kennel is required to have a special permit in the residential or the business.
So that means you'd see all residential kennels.
Correct.
No, because we changed that bylaw. We changed that bylaw because we didn't want people not to get residential kennels because it's gonna cost them $1,000 to get a residential kennel. So
Remember
we
that.
changed that
Something
bylaw.
about the lady only wanted 2 dogs or something like this.
You would have a public hearing for that?
When was the bylaw change? Yeah, when was the bylaw change? I'm not questioning, I'm just curious.
No, it was a couple of years ago, because we sat for a long time in here talking about kennels and how we were gonna do it. And it was still under the Board of Health at that time.
And the Board of Health said, if you have whatever the regular law is, which I don't know, in this town, you have the right to have a kennel. The only way you need a special permit is if you have underneath that. And in the bylaw, it says it goes to the Board of Health, that special
I
permit.
think that actually went to town meeting, didn't it?
Yes, it did go to
It
town.
went to town meeting and it was approved.
Right.
I remember
Interesting.
that.
I mean, for the record, I am not against this. I want to make it seem like we're not trying to put any holders on this but that's a good point. Should we be the ones legally hearing this?
Well, you're the special permit granting authority, so yes.
Yeah, I just don't know.
According to our bylaws, the way our bylaws are written, and I remember having a public hearing, which is why we incorporated all of this
Yes.
in
But
there.
then after that, we went back to, after it got approved, nobody was getting kennels.
Right.
Nobody we knew was getting a
Wasn't
kennel.
it the
This
one
is
that
still
came in
the
and
law.
just wanted to only have 2 dogs?
Oh my God, John,
And it was
you're
a
right.
fee. It was like 750, was it or something?
Yes.
And we were able to get it down. I remember that. That's all I remember.
I
about
do
kennels.
remember that a little
And
bit.
we went back to the drawing board on that kennel bylaw. I wish I had it with me, but
I think it was
don't
2 years
so.
ago.
What I'm trying to make clear though, is that if the town did not have a vote to withdraw what's in our books right now,
And I'm pretty sure they did, because the kennel, it's in the bylaw, because I just have the bylaws, I was just looking at bylaws.
I have the bylaws right here.
I hear what you're saying, but it came to town meeting. I don't have a problem if you do it, it's just that
Okay,
if
so
you
wait a
say
second.
that she can have a kennel license, and I go there and it's not done the way I want to do it, what right do I?
Can we put we can condition a special permit to which, now that I know that, I would not approve it without putting a condition on it saying that it's like, if we didn't say that, then it wouldn't have to go through Stacy, but it needs to.
I would think with the kennel, that would be standard.
It's not, not only is it not fair, it's not right for us to make that call without it going through someone, the expert on it first. I mean, it's within reason why
No,
it's
so
here.
typically, and that's why we send out the notices to the various.
But the fact that it should have gone to her, but that's not your fault. It's how our policies are. So yeah, I mean, again, I'm being a voting member, I'm for it. I would put in the condition that it must go before Stacy before.
Yeah, because the only variance that you are really here for is the acreage.
Right, so we technically need two votes on that. So we,
Yeah, for the special permit.
so we will need 2 votes.
Yep.
On one for the special permit and one for the variance, because hypothetically, one could be denied and one be approved,
You would probably,
technically.
you would probably want to put that rider into both.
No, good question.
I would cover.
The aspect about having Stacy approved, would she need to be under the variance part or just a special permit part? I think just a special permit part, because the variance would have, it's a zoning issue. The special permit is for what she's asking for, and that's where she comes into play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elise,
Open it up
do you
to
have
the
any other, I mean, they're with her. I know that, so they're not.
Okay, nobody.
Oh, yeah, no, that's Dave and his wife and Woody.
Okay. So I guess you guys have nothing to say.
Do you have, you have something? Oh, yeah, you are, right, good point, you are in a butter. I should, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Dave. Dave's just over there, I'm like, oh yeah, Dave is over there for a reason.
How y'all doing?
Not
Good,
too
nice to
bad.
see you. And you are for the record?
Dave Phillips, 1261 Main Street.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to welcome you guys to town. I think it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
I really don't see a problem with where you got it going. The height of your fence. And like Greg had brought it up, the visibility, but that's far enough away.
Yeah.
The issue that we've had in the past on that corner is the parking. Now, I mean, I know they're gonna be dropping the dogs off, but where are they gonna be? Where are they gonna be parking to really take the dog out of the park? In
So
your
we
driveway
have you seen the big parking area we have at the end of our garages?
Yeah.
Yeah.
on that side?
So to keep the dogs safe. And then there will be a gate to the backyard right there at that driveway, so you can have them enter through there too.
All right, other than that, as long as we're not parking, because I think the highway department put a sign, no parking from a certain distance on Main Street to Williams.
There's a sign there.
I think they did. I don't know where it exactly.
I believe they.
It's the wrong way to us.
That was for construction.
It's supposed to be on,
Construction.
Center Street. In that area, there's no parking on the street. The signs are coming.
Okay.
Okay. So she did address it. It's parking across the street on Main. I know what you're talking about, but that's on Main Street.
That's on William Street.
Like where a tall wall is.
Okay, right. I can picture it.
Sometimes.
So there will be no need for street parking. So it sounds like we're good there. It's just a matter of, but that's why I asked about would she be increasing anything on her property for the driveway, but I know the property well enough and I've seen the pictures that she's got ample room for, she doesn't need to add anything.
You know, when I initially saw this coming up and I'm like, oh, kennel. And, you know, I sat with Kerry this morning and got a little bit indoctrinated on what was going on.
Yeah.
I was very happy with what was gonna go on.
I
just, like you put in your letter, you know, saying, you know, people think of kennels, and, but that's really what we do.
No.
So I wish you all the luck in the world.
Thank you so much.
I'm done.
Thank you.
You Greg's got a quick question, but I've, of all the types of business, I feel like it's like, how is animal control not the one? I know we can't change, we have no say on who's the public granting authority, but like, this should be going before animal control, not before zoning, for that specific
For that
reason,
part.
or without their input on it.
I think like you said, though, a special permit with conditions that.
So I'm glad that if we weren't able to do that, I'd be like, oh, that's tough. I want, but
It's nothing to do with this, but I'm just gonna tell you, my daughter out west takes her dog every day to Doodle Daycare, and it's literally 10 acres.
we don't have that luxury, unfortunately.
It's out in the northwest.
Just for the
yes, every
record,
day.
I saw
There's 10 acres.
with Doodle
They
at-
get videos all day, the dog going in the
She's a
stream,
bastard.
jumping.
Greg just had a comment regarding
Yeah, so
fenced
I
area.
was just looking at your aerial view.
Yeah.
Is that the septic system? That's a raised septic system that's there now? Okay,
It's raised.
it's raised.
I mean, okay, I mean,
So we have a wall and then they built the septic. I thought it was a raised, like where they're gonna go grow things, but now that I seen the aerial view marked out, septic system, but it's underneath the grass.
right, and no, I
I'm
would
gonna see
say,
a dog dig a hole in there. I think I can tell.
well, at that point,
The leach.
that is her choice, not ours. Elise, do you have any comments?
No, I don't.
Okay, do you have enough information before you to make a decision on both of these two requests tonight?
I believe so.
That being said, Michelle, do you have anything else you want to add?
I did want to say that when I talked to Kerry a few days ago, I did say, you know, could you do a conditional vote? Because I want to make sure that I am working with Stacy and that everything is very compliant with everything that she thinks is appropriate. So I absolutely intend to work closely. And you said you were going to come a couple of times a year to inspect and.
The fact that you had already been discussed and both walked in tonight, I had a feeling that it was already been discussed and it wasn't an issue. But I'm glad that we've at least hashed that out. All right, so that being said, I will make the motion as a voting member to close the public input portion on Michelle White's case tonight. Is there a second?
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, Zachary Karen?
Hi, Greg Logan.
I, Elise Vincent.
Okay, that being said, I will then make a motion to approve, I'm going to go first, the variance application for this case. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye, Zachary Karen.
Hi, Greg Logan.
I, Elise Vincent.
All right, then I will say, I'll make a motion that we approve the special permit with the condition that the applicant will work with and everything will be pending under the approval of the animal control officer's inspection. I'm not mentioning it by name in case for some reason there's a change and I don't want to be too specific, but the animal control officer.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, Zachary Karen.
Hi, Greg Logan.
I, Elise Vincent.
All right, you are all set.
Here we go.
Off the record, did you live in Dayton during Hannaford to Go days when I was there?
Yeah.
Okay, so Dave said, welcome to town. So I thought you were like new to Dayton within time.
5 years. 5 years.
Oh.
Well, I was going to Hannaford long.
Before that, but okay.
I love Hannaford, you know that.
Yes, I do. I hadn't seen you in a while, Michelle White, and I was like, is that Michelle White?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
What?
Yeah, the poster. What movie was that?
Oh my God, it was, because you went to Chick-fil-A.
Maybe I swear I remember where. Riding it walk the past 2 hours.
Because I remember
My trouble.
every time I saw your daughter, I was like, I hate you always have to say my pleasure. She's like, I know, they do it into us. Do you still work there?
No, God, no, I work at.
I don't know which one's worse. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It's actually a good job.
Okay, okay. All right, guys, thank you so much. You got it, anytime. Yep.
You're welcome. I'll be in touch about.
We have no correspondence, Carrie, I would imagine.
I'm gonna send my brother to a little.
Public input.
Public input.
Quiet.
That takes like repair.
None.
No, is there any public input tonight? Obviously, we can't discuss the case that was voted on, but what did you?
I would like to thank you all for doing a wonderful job tonight, even Jonathan. Thank you very much. You guys handled yourself very well.
No problem.
I'm so glad I don't have to beat you up later.
Which one? You're gonna beat me up or I carry?
Oh my God, so Carrie, do we have any other public input tonight?
No.
No, I didn't have anything else to submit in writing. Board members, do you have anything
I'll
else you want?
second that, Mr. Chairman.
I haven't called for a motion yet.
I'm just helping. I got places to be.
Is there approval to, on the board, before us to vote the meeting minutes in for April 22nd?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, I, Zachary, Karen.
Hi, Greg Logan.
Hi, Jonathan Gale.
Hi, David Phillips.
Hi, Elise Vincent.
Is there a motion tonight to adjourn?
Yes.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, I, Zachary, Karen.
Hi, Greg Logan.
Hi, Jonathan Gale.
Hi, David Phillips.
Hi, Elise Vincent.
Thank you and good night.
Good night. Good night.
Night, Elise.
I want to hit you.
Good night, everyone.
Don't bite.
No, come here.